Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for July 21st, 2020. Please note I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storms that I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So today I'm looking at Invest 91L, which is currently in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and newly designated Tropical Depression 7, which is currently in the central Atlantic. So let's first off look at Invest 91L. It's not all that organized. There's a tropical wave that came in from here, and right now is trying to amplify right now because it has convection over the center and isn't dealing with land interaction right now. But there's one issue that seems to be left over, and that is dry air, especially to the north. And you can see the outflow boundaries coming from these storms. That means dry air has gotten into these storms and caused them to pretty much collapse. So that is a telltale sign of dry air. And you can see why that's there on the water vapor imagery. And that is because you have some northeasterly winds aloft ahead of 91L. But at the same time, the outflow actually associated with an upper ridge near 91L is causing southerly and southwesterly wind aloft. And in the middle of that means you have an upper trough here, and with an upper trough, you tend to have subsidence. So that seems to be what's going on right now. We've got some drying of the air, and at the same time, you see this area of drier air to the north, and that is being brought down by northeasterly winds aloft, and that explains why these two areas of thunderstorms right here do have the most prolific outflow boundaries because they're in that zone of drier air. However, it doesn't seem that like 91L will be dealing with that sort of thing for much longer. It looks like by Thursday evening that it'll be under an upper ridge here, and we'll have some rather light southeasterly wind aloft. But given that Invest 91L at this point will be also moving generally west-northwest to northwest, that means that this factor pretty much cancels out, and there probably won't be a whole lot of shear over 91L. And at the same time, you have strong easterly winds here to the south and weaker easterly winds here to the north. And when you have that is anticyclonic flow aloft, so that tends to help thunderstorms, or tends to help tropical waves or tropical cyclones like this ventilate. And so this would be a favorable upper air condition for development or consolidation or possibly intensification if it is already developed at this point. It doesn't seem that it'll have a lot of time to actually amplify into a strong tropical cyclone, luckily, but it will likely have time to amplify into a closed low, and so it could become a tropical depression or maybe tropical storm as it heads into the coast of Texas on Friday or Saturday. And that means that there will be likely enhanced rain chances because it is a weak system, but wind, it doesn't look like wind will be a major issue from 91L. Again, it's a weak system, sort of like 90L yesterday, where you have enhanced rain chances because of the convection that the system is carrying. So you might see some wet weather from this, but as for wind, it doesn't seem that Invest 91L will be a major event. Now, taking a look at Tropical Depression 7, it's done quite well in the past 24 hours. It's actually been able to develop, and that is because that elongated sort of low that we saw yesterday was under very persistent convection, was actually able to concentrate into a more tropical cyclone-like form by this morning, and the persistence of that and also convection over the center means it has basically satisfied the criteria for a tropical depression. And you can see it, again, it does look rather impressive. It's still very weak, so it's not like a very textbook type looking storm, but you do see some weak banding here that comes into this main region where there has been some pulsating convection here, and there is still some remaining east to northeasterly shear, but that is reducing, and it's likely that Tropical Depression 7 will intensify to become Tropical Storm Gonzalo, and that would be the earliest G named storm, so seventh named storm on record. Taking a look at infrared imagery gives you a good idea of how cold the convection is and how deep it is. And you can see that here's an example of why, or how we can tell that Tropical Depression 7 is weak. While the convection isn't actually too bad, it's pulsating and it's not really firing over the same area. So that means it's still trying to organize, even though, and it's probably not going to get like something such as a CDO for a little while yet. It still has to actually intensify and organize some more before it can end this current pulsating cycle of convection. Currently, the convection is rather deep, though. It's negative 70 degrees Celsius here, and there's been a couple pixels at times of negative 80. So with the warm waters, it's over. It's doing. It's having pretty deep convection, but at this point, it's still trying to actually organize and also strengthen. So TD7 right now is in a generally favorable environment, which will let it intensify for the next few days. And one of these favorable factors is the relatively moist air around it. You can see that TD7 is right here, and you can see that it's also connected to high relative humidity to the east and the west. And that means it's still embedded in an intertropical convergence zone. So it's able to fire convection and with the moisture from the intertropical convergence zone, and usually you tend to see systems that try to split off of that struggle as they try to get their own convection, but that hasn't quite happened yet. At the same time, you're still seeing some of that light easterly shear because TD7 is just getting out of the zone where their tropical easterly jet pretty much rules, and that caused some easterly shear, especially earlier over the system. But you can see that this area is getting near the western end of this area, and with increasing speed, which also cancels out some of the easterly shear, that means you're going to see easterly shear continue to decrease, and that means they'll have a low shear window within the next few days. Except as that process continues, you're going to keep seeing it move more westerly until the westerly shear becomes a problem as it enters the Caribbean. And it seems that it'll peak slightly before here, but as it moves into the Caribbean, it'll start moving even faster under the Caribbean low-level jet. And with that trade wind divergence, unless TD7 is pretty strong, it's going to have a hard time strengthening at all, and it's likely going to weaken and even dissipate while convection gets sheared away, and also gets subjected to, again, trade wind divergence. So that low-level divergence means sinking air. So convection is going to struggle, and as a result, TD7 is likely going to start struggling as it nears and gets into the Caribbean. Another reason why TD7 will start to struggle once it gets in the Caribbean is that it'll start getting strung out by the increasing trade winds ahead. And you can see that there's this large area of moist air, but it's all stretched out here, so you have it extending quite far east to west, but not that much north and south. So this is likely going to happen to the vortex too. So that will also make it hard for TD7 to even just maintain itself, and again, it's likely going to weaken or even dissipate in the Caribbean here. And then we'll have to see what it does further west, because there is trade convergence over here in the western Caribbean, and if it doesn't bury itself into Central America, it might try to do something in this region, but it's a little early for that. Also, at the same time, there's some dry air coming from the northeast that might try to dive into this region where TD7 is at this time step on Saturday afternoon. So we'll have to see what it's doing at this point, but it looks like it'll have some unfavorable conditions right here. And looking at the official National Hurricane Center cone for Tropical Depression 7, you can see it's expected to very soon become a tropical storm. And again, that would be Gonzalo, and it's expected to slowly accelerate and head into the Windward Island region, and likely peak on Friday or late Thursday as it gets into the western Atlantic, and then you start seeing the shear and trade wind divergence start trying to weaken it. But it looks like at this point it'll likely be a strong or at least moderate tropical storm by the time TD7 gets into the Windward Islands slash Trinidad, and also this region here basically. So if you have interest in this region, in this cone, or if you live there, just be prepared for a tropical storm. But it's hard to tell systems like this because they're so small. It takes a lot less for them to rapidly intensify or rapidly weaken. So it could be looking at a much stronger or weaker system, but it doesn't look like it'll be too much more than a strong tropical storm, or at very most low-end hurricane by the time it gets into this region. But just to be safe, make sure that you're prepared for some relatively strong winds as you'd see with a tropical storm, and the other weather effects like rain and thunderstorms. Otherwise, there isn't too. There's some activity actually in the eastern Pacific. There is Tropical Storm Douglas right now, but there isn't. The tropics aren't super active outside these two basins. So, if you have any questions or comments about my video, please let me know. And thanks for watching.